So, good morning. My name is Erika Chamberlain, for the listening audience online. Today, I'm speaking to you about the needs of boys and how to be a part of building them into the men that God created them to be. I call this message For the Love of Boys. Even if you don't have a son, you have boys in your life who you no doubt love. Nephews, cousins, brothers, sons of friends, godsons. So my goal today is to give you a few tools and point you in the direction to get more so you can love, respect, and build up boys in ways that speak to them and are meaningful to them. So here's a glimpse into my life. Will you go to the next slide? This is my family 4 years ago. I love this photo. It took all day to get ready for it. I had to bribe my 3 sons and husband to smile as genuinely as possible. I told them it was their 40th birthday present to me to do their hair and wear the clothes I picked out for them. And then, will you do the next slide? This next photo is from Hawaii last year. And it's more accurate of what my life is like. And they are all pranksters. They are like their father. And I am surrounded by testosterone. So my 3 wonderful sons, Blake is almost 18, David just turned 16, and Jed is 9. Raising sons is an adventure. When we meet people, sometimes they pause to take us in, and they say, "Wow, all boys." Yes, all boys, and I adore them. And in the spirit of embracing what the Lord gives us, I wanted to start with a little humor. So have you guys ever heard of "you might be a redneck" jokes? Okay, so I have my own called "you might be a boy mom." So, and there's new material every day for these jokes. So here's just a couple. You might be a boy mom if you occasionally find a dead frog or lizard in your washing machine. I'm so sorry. Dina has a story for her small group. You might be a boy mom if you regularly receive rocks as gifts. And they're very pretty, truly. You might be a boy mom if the word dude works its way into your vocabulary. You might be a boy mom if the cashier looks at your groceries for the week and says, "Wow, are you having a party?" You might be a boy mom if you can't find your bra and you find that it has been repurposed as a double slingshot. So, no, not Dina's. Dina has a story with my middle for her small group, if she wants to share it. Sure, yeah, by all means. So now a glimpse into my past. I was an only child. I was born to 2 military parents. We moved all over the country, and I was pretty shy. It took me a long time to make friends. I think God started preparing me to mother boys from the time I met my husband, Chris. We met in college, and time with him was always packed with adventure. I never knew what he'd suggest we do. He took me flying, snowmobiling, hiking, hunting, shooting, boating, kneeboarding, inner tubing. Dating him was high octane. He is still high octane. My quiet childhood of drawing, painting, reading, writing, running and track and cross country. Looking back at it after meeting him, I'm like, oh, it was kind of dull. And I loved the excitement, and we got married before our senior year in college. I was studying to be a teacher, and our senior year, so our first year married, I was observing and student teaching in a 2nd grade classroom. And oh my word, the little boys, they baffled me. They couldn't sit still. They were super easily distracted. And during art, which was my favorite subject, and I volunteered, often, I'll do the art lesson. The pictures they drew were crazy, wild, explosions, battles, crashes, death. I started rethinking what age I wanted to teach. So one day, driving back to our little apartment from working at the elementary school, I was listening to the local radio station, and I heard of a new book being advertised, Bringing Up Boys, by Dr. James Dobson. And it was a book directed at parents, but I was desperate for help with understanding the boys in my class. So even though it was meant for parents, I ran to Barnes & Noble immediately and bought it. It was an eye-opening read, and I highly recommend it. It's available on Audible if, it's a season in life where it's better to listen to books. One night I was reading it in bed, and I burst out laughing, and my husband was startled. He was like, what? So this part that I read, Dr. Dobson, if you don't know, he's a Christian psychologist, and he started Focus on the Family in 1977. And he was describing the testosterone bath that baby boys go through in their mother's womb and what it does to their brains. So if you haven't heard this already, I don't know if I'm going to say this right, Rebecca, so will you correct me if I'm wrong? So the testosterone bath they go through, it partially severs the corpus callosum. Am I saying that right? So the corpus callosum is this large bundle of more than 200 million, am I going to say this right, myelinated nerve fibers that connect the two hemispheres of the brain, which permits communication between the right and the left sides. So it's like the testosterone bath partially cuts it. And this is why men focus best on one task at a time, and while women's thoughts jump freely between multiple ideas and tasks for, most women. So I'm laughing, and my husband said, "What's so funny?" And I said, "This explains everything. You're brain damaged." And so on a side note, puberty gives young men's brains another testosterone bath. And for a while, it feels like they've lost their minds. I feel like Blake is almost on the other side of it. David is not yet. So it's a good thing to read up on so you're prepared when your son gets close to puberty or the boys in your life get close to puberty. So Chris laughed a little, but he looked hurt. And so I said, well, this is God's plan and design for why men focus so well on one task at a time and can give it so much concentration and energy. So that was helpful to understand. And while pondering all I was reading and Bringing Up Boys, I was listening to the radio again. The radio has played a large part in my life with boys. And I heard a study that explained some of my communication difficulties with my new husband. So I don't know the name, but does anybody in here know what part of a man's brain lights up when he's listening to a woman talk? I don't know it either. But the same part that lights up as when he's listening to music. So when a man's listening to a woman talk, the same part lights up as when he's listening to music. So they were talking about what the conclusion of that study was, and they were saying, so a woman's voice is beautiful to his ears like a melody, but the words don't necessarily sink in. It's like, that makes sense. It's because he'd nod and smile, and later, we talked about this. He's like, no, we didn't. So when a man listens to another man speak, a different part of his brain lights up. And so men tune into men's voices the best. So I'm processing this. So if my boys' students focus best on one task at a time, and my voice comes across more like a melody in their brains, what should I do? So I made some changes to my teaching style. I decided I'm going to keep my directions short, and I'll always write my instructions out on the board. And then I decided as often as possible I would have boys repeat the directions that I was giving the class. So this was really helpful with them. And I saw a lot less of the glassy-eyed stares from my boy students. And when my sons were old enough to read, it was helpful to write out their chores so they didn't have to try to remember my multi-step directions or keep coming back to me for reminders or me feeling like I'm nagging them. So it cut back on a lot. And it was a good change for them when they could read. So after teaching for a few years, we started having children. In 2006, we had our first boy, Blake, and I was so thrilled to have a boy first. I always wanted a big brother. And I totally envisioned having a girl next. And in 2007, we had our second son, David. And I was surprised to have two sons in a row. My mom's family is really girl heavy. And I thought, surely I will have a daughter. I just thought it was genetic destiny to have a girl. And I would not trade my sons for any girls in the world. I have loved them crazily from the beginning. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say that I felt inadequate when I had my second boy. I thought, I'm going to raise two boys? Teaching boys at school was one thing, but raising them, I felt like was a whole new level of expertise and where I was deficient. So when they were still small, I read another book, and I read it for my marriage, but it ended up impacting my mothering as well. It's called Love and Respect. Will you switch it? Thank you. So this is another book I highly recommend, and it's based on Ephesians 5:33. Each man must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. So I don't have time to go into all the ways that this book blessed me, but the biggest insight was that men need respect like they need air. It helped me see all the ways my attitude and words were cutting down my husband, and it gave me wording to use to build him up and express what I admired and respected about him. It was life-changing for us. And I realized the ideas applied to my boys. And although it felt really clumsy at first, I did my best to communicate respect and admiration to my sons for their character and their choices. So here are some examples. That was so brave. God made you to protect your family one day. I admire your courage. Wow, that was really honorable. I'm so proud you told the truth about breaking the window when it would have been so easy for you to hide it. God is pleased when we speak the truth. And my oldest son, you would never know it now, but my oldest son, Blake, went through a season where he struggled with his weight, and he was very self-conscious. His dad is super fit and health conscious, so it was a rough season for him. So when he got into late middle school, he shot up and he got really thin. And then in high school, he started taking a weights class and developed his muscles. He started pausing where he knew I would see him and start flexing and all the poses. And I was like, he wants to be affirmed right now. So I'd say often, I'm so impressed with your discipline, Blake. It takes some work to become fit and healthy. Are you pleased? I'm so proud of you. And he was proud of himself. So, and at a family reunion, my cousin's 7-year-old son, same age as my youngest, Jet, he was sitting right next to me, and I was fixing my hair. We were sitting at a table, listening to a Native American language teacher talk to us about our Eastern Shawnee roots. I'm part Native American, if you can't tell, very small amount. So I laid my hair tie on the table and was doing something with my hair, and the speaker was super passionate about the subject. All the adults were really interested, but the younger kiddos, like the 7-year-olds, were losing it. So I don't think anyone else besides me noticed. My little second cousin took the hair tie off, and he was starting to play with it, and then he shot it across the room. And he looked at me, and he just had guilt all over his little face, and I was trying not to laugh, because he reminds me of Jet. So afterward, he retrieved it, he gave it back to me, and he apologized. And I tried using the respect lingo with him, even though I don't know him super well. I thought, I think this will be fine, even though he doesn't know me super well. And I said, that was so honorable. You could have tried to act like it didn't happen, but you came to me and apologized. You are an honorable young man. I'm really proud of you. And my little second cousin just stood there and he beamed. He had a super sweet little smile. And his mom, my cousin's wife, overheard me. And I didn't have a chance to talk about it with her. But she was smiling and she said, wow, I like the way you said that. That's a good word to use to encourage my boy. So this book reminded me of something I'd read in Bringing Up Boys. this book, Love and Respect, boys and men don't crave eye contact the same way that women and girls do. It can feel confrontational to them. They're usually, when they're hanging out with each other, they're usually shoulder to shoulder. Their eyes are not on each other, but they're on the activity in front of them. Even infant boys look away from their mother's faces more than baby girls. And that's something I noticed. I'd hold my friends' baby girls, and they would just gaze at my face. And my little boys, they'd look at me and smile when they were babies, and then they'd look like, what's big brother doing? What's daddy doing? So it's how they're wired. So look at me when I'm talking to you for a boy is difficult. I found that talking to my husband and my sons while they're engrossed in a mindless task, like cleaning a gun or changing the oil, goes much better than forcing them to always stop and look me in the eyes. I do ask them to sometimes, because boys, they need to know how to look people in the eye, and they need to understand that their wife is going to need that one day. But I don't demand it all the time. I've had some of my best talks with my husband while he's cleaning a gun. And a while ago, I had this really unexpected talk, a 2-hour-long discussion with my 16-year-old son about his grief and his friend group's grief over the son loss of his older cousin in an accident almost 4 years ago now. And we had this talk while he was playing a video game on his phone. He would look up at me occasionally, but it was clear he was much more comfortable sharing what was on his heart without having to maintain eye contact with me. Also, everyone else was asleep, and nighttime usually seems to be the time when our kids open up and are willing to talk about deeper things. So as your kids get older and their biological clock changes and they want to go to bed later, they need to, but they just can't help it. They want to go to bed later. So you might want to take naps when your kids are tweens and teens, so you have some energy for them when they're ready to talk. Also, this book made me realize that just like a good father shows a daughter how she should be treated, so she knows how to choose a good husband. So I, as a mother of sons, need to treat my sons in a way that will help them select a wife wisely. It would break my heart to watch them marry women who berate them, criticize them, and undermine them. So when I ask things of my boys that don't come naturally to them, I use the phrase husband training. I try to frame my needs and desires as a woman in a way to help prepare them to be good husbands one day. It seems to be working pretty well. We'll see. We'll see what my daughters-in-law, if I have them one day, tell me. For example, when they resist or complain about chores, I say something like, your dad and I could really use your help with the yard and cleaning the basement this weekend. And one day, when you're married, your wife will greatly appreciate you willingly participating in the chores inside and outside the house. So consider this husband training. One of your dad's biggest jobs is to get you ready to be a man, and one of my biggest jobs is to prepare you to be a husband. And I don't go into detail, but after my husband had the talk with them about where babies come from, I started letting my boys know when it was my week. And they do this. Like, la, 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 la. Don't tell me that, Mom. But I say, I just need you to be extra kind these next couple days. And one day, when you're married, Lord willing, your wife will need you to be extra thoughtful and kind for a few days a month. So once in a while, when I pick the movie we watch together, and it's not often. I don't ask them to watch romantic movies very often. And it's not what they want to watch. I can say, this is good husband practice. Sometimes your wife will watch the movie that you want to watch. And sometimes you'll need to watch the movie that she's interested in. So just as my boys were getting old enough to start asking for a we, I heard another study on the radio about why so many boys and men are addicted to video games. This really shocked me. It sent chills down my spine. So, do you know what part of the brain lights up when a boy or a man is playing a video game and passes a level or gets some kind of recognition in the game? Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's going to give them some kind of dopamine rush.
Yes, it gives them a dopamine rush, and it's the same part of the brain that lights up when he learns a new skill or accomplishes a novel task, like how to weld, snowboard, ride a bike, change a tire. The exact same part of the male brain lights up. The study didn't analyze girls' brains under the same circumstances, but it showed the male brain does not distinguish between accomplishment in the real world and the fantasy world. So I was like, what a terrifying trap for so many men. They turn to fantasy for validation, and eventually it can become their whole world. After a lot of discussion, my husband and I did allow video games in our home, but we've limited the time they spend on them. And we talk about this study with them periodically. They've heard it multiple times now in their lives. And there have been video game fasts when we've been concerned that fantasy has started becoming as important or more important than reality. When my older two sons were in their tween years, this part's going to be a little humbling, I struggled maintaining my goals with how I communicated with them. I honestly got distracted and I filled up my time with lots of good things, but I missed the better thing I lost my intentionality with my sons. My oldest and I especially seemed to always be at odds with each other. He resented chores. He was irritated by all our church commitments. Oops. It was difficult to have a conversation with him. And I was not sure how to turn things around with Blake. And then one day on Focus on the Family, the author of Love and Respect was being interviewed about his new book, specifically about the mother and son relationship. And this book is called Mother and Son, The Respect Effect. Thank you. I ordered it immediately on Amazon, so how times had changed in 20 years. And I devoured it. This is also available on audiobook. It gave so many great strategies for how to communicate with sons, and with facial expressions, tone, and wording to make sure that you're showing respect and admiration instead of what boys can interpret as disgust and disdain. It was slow going, but I made changes in how, when, and where I spoke to him, and it helped me rebuild a healthy relationship with him. Here are a few of the changes I made. First, I made sure that if I needed to correct him, that I waited until I was calm and I could speak in a normal tone with a relaxed voice. Second, if I needed to discuss something difficult or something that could embarrass him, I would wait until we could talk privately, or if I needed to talk immediately with him, I would pull him away to a different room so that there was no audience of friends or family. Third, I made sure that my words were still honoring, even if what he had done was not honorable. Here's a recent example. I admire the man God made you to be, and I see so much hard work and discipline as you're studying to be a pilot. He's testing for his pilot's license in 2 weeks. I can't believe it. Can you help me understand why you didn't mow the lawn and do the dishes like you agreed to before leaving to go flying with your grandpa? So the language that the author outlines does not come naturally to me, but it did give me good ideas and helpful phrasing. And it's like anything, the more you do it, the easier it gets. Also, another helpful phrase for me is get curious, not furious. And this helps me come to my sons with an open mind and a calm spirit without jumping to conclusions, which I'm super good at. And 4, I started playing with his hair and rubbing his back in the morning when I came to wake him up. During the day, he would resist me trying to show affection to him. He'd get stiff. But when he was still sleepy, I could cuddle him and I could pray out loud over his day. And I thank God for how he has uniquely made and talented my son. I do this almost every day. And I feel much perkier in the morning, and I can speak more coherently and pray more energetically than at night. So my husband faithfully prays with them at night, and I usually say a few words, but honestly, by the end of the day, I'm pretty spent. So morning is my best time. So I started doing this because the author talked about how Jesus' ministry began with his baptism and the spoken praise and approval of the Father over his Son. And he, Emerson Eggerichs, he talks about how sons need to hear that their mothers and fathers approve of them and are proud of them. It took a while, but he softened to me, and today we have a much better relationship. I can hug him now in the middle of the day, and he'll hug me back. And my husband has been an amazing father through all the seasons of raising our sons. Our last came along in 2014, and so this is the year he'll be 10, but he's convinced he's a teenager. Through all the boy research that I've done, a good father is by far the best predictor of raising a son with a healthy understanding of manhood. So if you have a son, I encourage you to lean heavily on the men in your life who love your boy to help raise him. And if you don't have a son, would you consider sharing your husband to spend some time with a boy who doesn't have a dad? Until just about 200 years ago, this is still the way it is in much of the world, but in first world countries up until 200 years ago, sons spent pretty much all their days with their fathers from the time they woke up in the morning and from a very young age, feeding animals, tending crops, fixing fences. Whatever the father's trade was, his sons helped him. Now our boys spend a majority of their time with women. Their mothers, elementary school teachers, daycare providers, Sunday school teachers, and a lot of those women don't love or strive to understand boys. Many see them as nuisances, distractions, or dangerous. This generation of boys and young men is in crisis. They are being told the future is female. What does that do to their hearts? So if you list, in your small groups, you're going to get a list of resources, and the last two have a lot of statistics about what's happening with this generation of young men coming up. And if you're not familiar with them, they are shocking. They are so sad. This generation desperately needs the love, respect, and understanding of women, and the wisdom, guidance, and investment of fathers and men. Many boys don't know their fathers at all and only see their dads briefly in the evenings and on the weekends. Hopefully, busy dads make an effort to be available and intentional with their sons when they're home. Boys need men to show them how to become men. So if you take nothing else away from this morning, please do these two things. 1, make sure you make time for meaningful activity and guidance with your boys, with their fathers, uncles, grandfathers, and any other men who love your boys and want to see them succeed. And 2, make sure your words encourage and build them up, even when you need to correct them. Oh, thank you.